France won 3-1, but if you only look at the scoreline, you miss the real story of this match, because for close to an hour, Senegal didn't just compete with one of the World Cup favorites, they disrupted them. They made France uncomfortable, they cut off the usual attacking rhythm, and they created the kind of uncertainty that can completely reshape an opening game. And then, almost in an instant, the entire match turned. This was supposed to be the start of France's World Cup campaign, the kind of night where a favorite lays down an early marker. In the end, they did get the result. 3 goals, 3 points, and a winning start against Senegal. But this was not a simple, controlled performance from start to finish. The result says authority. The performance, especially in the first half, says there are still questions to answer. And that's what made this game so interesting. From the opening period, Senegal approached the match with a very clear idea. They stayed compact, they protected the spaces between the lines, and they refused to let France feed their front players quickly. There was discipline to their shape and aggression in the way they defended, but it was measured aggression. They didn't press recklessly. They made France play in front of them, and for long stretches, that worked. You could see the effect immediately. Kylian Mbappe was not receiving the ball in the areas where he usually becomes devastating. France's attacking combinations never really flowed in that first phase of the game. The front line looked disconnected, the rhythm wasn't there, and the game became physical, awkward, and far more competitive than France would have wanted. That's an important detail, because opening matches in major tournaments often test favorites in exactly this way, not always with dramatic chaos, but with resistance, with structure, with an opponent willing to challenge them mentally as much as tactically. Senegal did that very well. And the key point is this: Senegal were not just defending, they also created opportunities of their own. They had chances that could have changed the entire direction of the match before halftime. That matters because it tells you France were not simply waiting for their moment while controlling everything underneath. For a long stretch, they were being asked real questions at both ends of the pitch. So what changed? The turning point wasn't just that France attacked more after the break. It was that Michael Olise began to influence the game in more advanced areas. Once he started receiving the ball in space, the picture changed completely. Senegal's defensive structure, which had looked so compact and so reliable, suddenly had to stretch, and against a team like France, that is the danger zone. The opening goal captured that shift perfectly. Olise's through ball for Mbappe wasn't just a good assist. It was the kind of pass that alters a match because of its timing, weight, and precision. It took defenders out of the game in a single action and released Mbappe exactly how you cannot afford to release him, running onto the ball in stride with the finish arriving naturally. That was the breakthrough France had been waiting for, and once it came, the game moved into a different phase entirely. Senegal were no longer protecting a balanced contest. They were reacting. Their shape became more vulnerable, the spaces grew, and France started to look like the side everyone expects them to be when they find momentum. That is the real warning from this match for the rest of the tournament. France do not need many openings. They do not need complete control for 90 minutes. They only need the game to loosen for a short period, because once it does, their attacking quality can completely overwhelm an opponent. Then came another reminder of why France are so dangerous over the course of a World Cup: the depth. Bradley Barcola came off the bench and scored shortly after entering the game. That's a massive development in a tournament setting. Most teams are heavily dependent on their starting 11. France can change the game with their substitutes without losing level, intensity, or quality. In fact, they can raise it. Fresh legs, fresh pace, fresh attacking threat. That becomes incredibly valuable when matches tighten, when opponents tire, and when tactical plans begin to break down. Barcola's goal mattered for more than the scoreline. It reinforced the idea that France are not just dangerous because of their stars. They are dangerous because they can alter the match from multiple points in the squad. Senegal did respond and briefly kept the contest alive, which again speaks to their competitiveness on the night. Even after France had gained control, Senegal still found a way to stay in the game. That is another reason this should not be dismissed as a routine win for France. Senegal had enough in their performance to make the match uncomfortable until Mbappe's second goal settled it. And that finish, from long range, was another example of what separates Mbappe from almost everyone else in international football. He ended the night with 2 goals, but the broader impact goes beyond the numbers. Even in the periods where France struggled to involve him, he still shaped Senegal's defensive behavior. Defenders had to track his movement. They had to remain aware of his runs. That attention alone changes the geometry of a game. It creates spaces for others, it forces hesitation, and it puts constant pressure on the back line. Then when the decisive moment arrives, he has the ability to punish it immediately. That is why his performances feel so decisive. He doesn't need dominance over every minute of the match to define the result. He only needs the right moments. But this was not only about Mbappe, and it would be a mistake to reduce the performance to the goal scorers alone. Adrien Rabiot, for example, had an important role in France becoming more stable and more assertive as the game went on. He helped control midfield, covered ground, and supported both phases of play. Those contributions often sit underneath the headlines, but they are frequently what allow a team to shift from frustration into control. The centre-back partnership also deserves recognition. Senegal's attack asked difficult physical questions, and early on, that battle was intense. But as the match developed, France's central defenders began to impose themselves more effectively, winning duels, recovering possession, and helping sustain territorial pressure in the second half allowed France to keep Senegal pinned back for longer periods. That platform was important once the game opened up. From Senegal's perspective, there is disappointment here, but there should not be panic. For long stretches, they carried out an intelligent game plan against one of the strongest squads in the competition. They defended with discipline, they brought energy, and they created opportunities. That is not a small thing. Against a side of France's level, those are meaningful positives. The problem was efficiency. At this level, chances are precious, and when you fail to convert the moments you do create, elite teams eventually make you pay for it. That was the difference in this match. Senegal showed enough to suggest they can still compete strongly in the group, but the lesson is a harsh one and a familiar one in tournament football. Good structure and good effort have to be matched by precision in the decisive moments. Now, if we turn back to France, there is one major question that still hangs over an otherwise impressive result. They conceded again, and that matters. When a team scores 3 times, defensive concerns can be pushed to the background very quickly. But knockout football does not always give you the freedom to trade moments. Against stronger opposition later in the tournament, defensive lapses may carry a much heavier price. The attack already looks capable of winning matches. The challenge is whether the defensive side can be reliable enough to win the biggest ones. That is really the central takeaway from this game. France showed 2 versions of themselves. In the first half, they looked vulnerable to an organized, disciplined opponent capable of denying their main attacking routes. In the second half, they looked like a team with world-class solutions, tactical adaptability, and the squad depth to punish even slight defensive weakness. So what does this result mean going forward? For France, it sends a powerful message. They do not need to dominate from the first whistle to beat good teams. They can absorb difficult periods, they can adjust, they can wait for quality to emerge. And with Mbappe leading the line, Olise capable of unlocking a defense, and Barcola making immediate impacts from the bench, they have multiple ways to break a match open. That makes them one of the most dangerous teams in the tournament. For Senegal, the result hurts, but the performance offers genuine encouragement. They proved they can compete with elite opposition. They showed defensive organization and enough attacking intent to create real problems. But they also learned how unforgiving these matches can be when you do not take your chances. And that brings us to the final verdict. The first half told us France are not untouchable. The second half reminded us why they are still among the favorites. Senegal exposed weaknesses, disrupted rhythm, and made life difficult for long stretches. But once France found space, and once Olise began to influence the game more decisively, the quality gap became impossible to ignore. Mbappe delivered when France needed the breakthrough. Olise changed the attacking dynamic. Barcola underlined the strength of the bench. And although the 3-1 scoreline may look comfortable on paper, the real lesson is deeper than that. France may not always start fast. They may still have defensive issues to solve. But when they hit top gear, very few teams in this tournament will be able to live with them.